Brakathia Howell, Brakathia Washai, Brakathia Howell, Brakathia Washai, Brakathia Howell, Brakathia Howell, Bashim Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakakudash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone and True Well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim to Sadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. I'm the Priest Shaman. This week's topic is going to be entitled Coronavirus Cover is a cover to the deflationary crisis. And it's going to be a follow-up because the lesson I did was speaking on the fact that we're currently the U.S. economy and world economies are experiencing deflation, which is the value of the U.S. dollar is going up and the cost of things are going down. And most things you buy are deflationary. This guy Jeff Booth speaks on it. A few other economists predicted this, and in fact, I was watching the uneducated economist, one of his videos, and it's very telling because he read a letter from 2002 with Ben Bernanke speaking on the side effects of printing so much money and how it would lead to deflation, and then the steps that they would take. And beat for beat, even leading up to Trump proposing tax cuts to try to increase inflation because they want to get inflation rate to up to 2, but they can't do it. All this stuff was, I'm talking about 18 years ago, beat for beat, what Ben Bernanke was saying is happening now. And I was kind of like, how can I simplify this topic to people, to people that might not understand it? And I was like thinking, so before I break the point, let me just read this. Obadiah 1:6. How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? One of Esau's hidden things is his banking system. And there's certain words that he uses that really plays with your mind, such as when people say the Federal Reserve is printing money and buying things. They're not buying anything. The Federal Reserve does not have the power to buy things, only to lend. So I hope that's the first step in explaining what's going on. They're just lending, extending line of credit. They're not buying anything. And how did the Federal Reserve bail out people? When you hear somebody, let's use a company that's getting bailed out, Boeing, right? They owe the banks. Companies owns banks, and they can't pay banks back. So what the Federal Reserve does is loan money to the U.S. government by buying corporate bonds, as they would say. I'm sorry, buying U.S. government bonds, and the government then in terms buy corporate bonds or corporate debts, which is paying back the bank in the form of another loan. It's all borrowing, transferring loans. Now, the more money that gets pumped into this bond, it drives the interest rates down. The return on investment, it drives it down, forcing investors to jump into another investment that could kind of give them the money back. So let me simplify it as best as I can. If you are in debt, right? And so you're in debt. You have a credit card, you maxed it out. I come to you and said, okay, you're $2,000 in the hole. Here, I'll give you another $2,000. Now you have $2,000 additional debt, but you have to pay me back this $2,000 on top of the $2,000 that you're in the hole. So you have to come up with $4,000 because I'm a bank and you're a bank. You have to come up with $4,000, right? So you're thinking, what can I use this money for to come up with this $4,000? Well, you can't buy things because most things you buy is deflationary. What do I mean? So if I gave you this $4,000, I mean, I have $2,000 of spending power. If you go out and buy anything, let's say you buy an airplane, you buy a TV or whatever, in 5 years' time, with inflation, that TV, that airplane, that whatever you try to put your money in, is going to be worth less in time due to technology, right? So the bank has to come up with a way to put money into something that's going to give them back more money to cover the loan and to square themselves even. To, for banks to normally do that, they go into bonds so they could get a guaranteed return. However, since more and more people are fleeing into bonds, you're getting less and less return on your investment. So instead of so people think that when the government gets bailed out or these banks get extended loans, they're going to use this money to buy things and pump the money into the economy, except they're not doing that. They're holding the money and pumping it back into the companies that they bailed out. So going back to Boeing, if Boeing is $500 million in debt, and you give them another $500 million, and you say, look, here's $500 million, but you could only buy more airplanes. Well, they're gonna say airplanes are deflationary. You got to maintain them. They're gonna. So they say, the only thing I could think of is to give this money back to the people that are invested in this company. So that's why it's having a deflationary effect. And I was thinking about how can I explain negative interest rates? Well, just think about it like this: your checking account. If you have a checking account, that's a negative return on it's a negative return on investment because you have fees to hold money in an account. So if you put $90 in your checking account and you don't touch it for like a year, you'll lose money in a checking account because there's fees to have a checking account. That's the same thing as negative rates. So if all savings accounts were to then be charged, it'll be negative interest rate. It'll be negative rate of return. So banks are trying to find ways to get back return, not lose, get back return on the investment. So that's what's causing this deflationary effect. All these different, and you know what? The coronavirus is a proof that it's a cover up that all this thing will happen. Japan did the same thing. Japan got rid of the coronavirus situation very quickly. Yet they were doing stimulus and bailouts because they also want to drive their rates down. Let me read another scripture real quick. Slakia. Psalms 94:20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? The throne of iniquity having fellowship with thee, meaning we can't rule with the so-called white man. As you can see, this man is running his system by completely different laws that's operated by the Bible, such as usury and the mischief of this banking system, man. Going back to the topic at hand, okay, so why are all these nations doing stimuluses and stuff like that? Because whoever has the lowest rate has the benefit. So let's go back to that banking situation, right? If we understand that if your bank charges you fees, right, that is a negative return on investment. So let's say your bank charges you $15, right, and my bank charges me $5, right? What I could do then is say, look, I could take out a loan at $5 and just sell it to you for $10 and make the profit. Because countries like Germany and Japan that have negative rates, what they're doing is they're buying US bonds and just loaning it back out to other countries at their rate, which is a lower rate than the United States. That's how come Donald Trump also wants negative interest rates. He said what? He said it's not good for the world, but it's good for the US. I'm not president of the world, I'm a president of the US. And there was a pause for a minute, then people started to clap. Only a certain people. And Donald Trump said, thank you, thank you. The smart people get it. Well, that's what he meant by that. That's what he meant by that. That's how come all these nations are doing this stimulus thing, because they also want to drive their rates down and just sell the difference to another country that has loan out the difference to another country that has higher rates. And this is all leading to the collapse of this monetary system. Psalms 94:20 again. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? So this situation that we're talking about, this mischief that the so-called white man is coming up with, they're not able to create inflation, a money velocity rather, because to inflate something, you need dollars. You need the transaction of dollars happen at a very fast rate, and people are not trusting currencies. They're not trusting federal banks. They need something they could trust. They're trying to come up with a currency that they could trust and something that they could do to increase the transaction speeds throughout all these different nations. This is what's leading up to a digital currency, a digital backed currency, encrypted. Some speculate should it be backed by gold. I don't think they're going to back it by gold. That's just me. I think they're going to go with a government highly encrypted currency, digital currency, as a means to increase money velocity, as a means to increase inflation and try to solve the problems. That's one route they could go. Another route they could go to crash the system is to give the Federal Reserve the ability to actually just straight up buy things and not lend. That will also lead to hyperinflation very quickly. But yeah, Donald Trump, man, he's pushing for tax cuts, man. So that also would increase spending. If people was getting taxed less, they'll go out and buy more. But yeah, so that was just a quick follow up on that previous lesson, man, because I know this whole inflation deflation thing can seem rather confusing. Because trust me, when I did the lesson a few months back ago, I said, look, inflation has to come because the more money you print and the Feds have to raise the interest rates, and when you raise the rates, that's going to lead to inflation, and that didn't happen. And I had to research and figure out why, and this is why. The Feds only have the ability to lend and not buy. So with that, I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai Bahashim Rakakodash, the lands of the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well, and salutations to the hopefully elect out there. Hope brothers are edified and see the fact that, look, this coronavirus situation did not have anything to do with the financial system crashing. And this monetary system will crash, man. It has to collapse. A new system has to be made wherein digital currency, digital transaction, digital ledgers, which are highly encrypted, highly backed, and highly secure and trusted, to replace this current system. All right, shalom.